For the past 18 months at Blackwood Co, I've been Julian Mercer, a bland risk analyst, always the first to arrive and the last to leave with soulless spreadsheets. Sasha Voss looked at me and saw only an easily manipulated tool. She didn't know that for the past 540 moves she made was under my watchful eye. I wasn't there to climb the ladder. I was there to count down her downfall. Living a dualistic life isn't difficult. The difficulty lies in remaining silent when the enemy believes they are winning. But that silence ended this afternoon when she crossed my final boundary, my family. The box on my passenger seat now contains only 11 items. A cup of coffee, a few picture frames, and a terrible truth Sasha's about to face. 2:14 p.m. Everything officially begins.
The box on my passenger seat had 11 items in it. I counted them while I sat in the parking garage. Engine off, hands still on the wheel. A coffee mug. 2 framed photos. A phone charger I had never gotten around to taking home. A legal pad with 3 months of handwritten notes I would never need again, not because they were useless, but because everything on them was already filed, copied, and sitting in a secure server under a case number Sasha Voss had no idea existed. I did not look up at the building. I looked at my watch instead. 2:14 p.m. 11 minutes since I had walked out of her office. 11 minutes since she had said my wife's name. I want to tell you something about that moment, not the firing, not the threats, but the specific second she said Elena, not your wife, not your family. Elena, first name. The way she said it made clear she knew the last name too, knew the address, had done the kind of research that means someone has been thinking about you as a target for a while. I remember exactly what I felt. Nothing. Not the nothing of shock. Not the nothing of fear that freezes you in place. The nothing of a door closing very quietly in a very large house. One room going dark. The rest of the lights still on. I picked up my phone and called Elena. She picked up on the second ring. She always picks up on the second ring when I am calling from a number she recognizes, a habit from 18 months of understanding that if I call from work in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, something has moved. Hey, she said. It's done, I said. Phase 2 is done. We're in the final window. A pause. Not surprised she knew this was coming. The pause of someone recalibrating, moving pieces around in their head. How long? She asked. 6 days. Maybe 5. Okay. Another pause. Are you okay? I thought about that. The honest answer was complicated. She said your name, I said. The silence on Elena's end was a different kind of silence than before. Smaller. Tighter. Come home, she said. I started the engine. I should explain something before I go further, because if you are hearing this story for the first time, you are probably wondering why a man who just got fired and threatened is driving home instead of doing something about it. Here's what Sasha Voss did not know about me. 18 months before she said my wife's name in that glass office on the 34th floor of Blackwood Co, I walked into that same building as a different kind of employee. My name badge said Julian Mercer, Senior Risk Analyst. My real employer was the Securities and Exchange Commission. My actual job title, the one on the paperwork she would see eventually, was Special Investigator, Financial Crimes Division. I had been placed inside Blackwood Co to build a case. Not guess at one. Not suspect one. Build one document by document. Transaction by transaction. 18 months of evidence that a ghost fund was being used to siphon money from institutional investors through a network of shell accounts that traced back, eventually, to one person. Sasha Voss had just fired the only person who knew exactly how complete that case was. She had also, in doing so, given me the last piece I needed. The threat. On record. Witnessed by 3 people in that office, who did not yet know they were witnesses. I am going to tell you exactly what I felt driving home that afternoon. Because I think it matters. Because people hear a story like this, and they assume the person at the center of it felt powerful. Righteous, like everything was under control. What I actually felt was tired. Tired in the specific way you get tired after 18 months of being 2 people simultaneously. One version of yourself showing up every morning to a job you are not supposed to do well enough to get noticed, and another version sitting in your car at lunch, reviewing encrypted files on a secondary phone you keep in a magnetic case under the driver's seat. Tired of watching Sasha walk past my desk and not knowing what she saw when she looked at me. Tired of the particular discipline required to have information that could end someone's career and say nothing. Do nothing. Wait. Elena understood the tired better than anyone. She had signed up for it when I took the assignment, had looked at me across our kitchen table 18 months ago, our daughter asleep upstairs, and said, "How long?" And I had said, "I do not know exactly." And she had nodded and said, "Okay. Tell me what you need from me." That was Elena. I got home at 3:07. Maya, she was 7. She would correct you if you called her. 6 was still at school. The house was quiet. Elena was in the kitchen, and when I came in she looked at me for a moment before she crossed the room and put her arms around me. And I let her, and we stood there in the kitchen in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon not saying anything for a while. Then she stepped back and looked at my face. She said my name, Elena said. It was not a question. Yes. The address? I do not know specifically what she has. Enough to say your name the way she said it. Elena was quiet. She had the specific stillness of someone who has thought about a scenario many times before it arrives, and is now comparing the reality against the preparation. The team knows, she said. They knew before I left the building. She nodded once. Then she said, "Did she mention Maya?" I had been waiting for that question since the parking garage. "No," I said. "Elena exhalet." And then she asked me something I had not expected, not the logistics, not the timeline, not what happens next. She asked, "What did you feel?" When she said my name. "What did you actually feel?" I looked at her, like I was done waiting, I said. She held my gaze for a moment. Then she nodded slowly, the way you nod when someone tells you a truth that does not surprise you but that you needed to hear said out loud. 6 days, she said. 6 days, I said. She turned back to the counter. I sat down at the kitchen table. Somewhere across the city, Sasha Voss was probably already planning what to do with a Tuesday night free of the last person who had tried to tell her the truth. I opened my laptop. Have you ever had to stay quiet while someone thought they were winning? Drop a comment. I want to know who is watching this one. The first thing Sasha posted was at 9:47 p.m. that night. A photo of a restaurant I recognized, rooftop, downtown. The kind of place where the menu does not have prices, because the prices are not the point. She was with 3 people I did not recognize, all of them laughing at something outside the frame. The caption said, "Sometimes the week cleans itself up." 11 words. 412 likes by the time I closed the app and put my phone face down on the desk. I am not going to tell you that did not land somewhere. It did. Not because I wanted her celebration to mean nothing, but because she did not know what she was celebrating yet. She thought she had won a Tuesday. She had no idea she had just started a clock. I worked until midnight. Filed 2 documents, cross-referenced a transaction trail I had been building for 11 weeks, and confirmed what I already knew: the ghost fund had moved $340 million across 6 accounts in the last 18 months. All of it traceable. All of it documented. What I needed now was not more evidence. What I needed was the legal authorization to move. And that authorization was 48 hours from being signed by a federal judge who had been reviewing our case file since the previous Thursday. I closed the laptop. I checked on Maya. She was asleep with one arm hanging off the bed. She always slept like that, like she had fallen mid-gesture. I put her arm back under the covers. She did not wake up. I stood in the doorway of her room for a moment longer than necessary. Then I went to bed. Day 2 was a Tuesday. Day 3 was a Wednesday. I do not have much to tell you about those days. That is not procedural calls with the legal team, a document revision, a 3-hour review session on a secure line with 2 people whose names I am not going to use here. What I can tell you is that during those 2 days, Sasha posted 4 more times. The supercar appeared on day 3, a photo taken from the driver's seat, steering wheel in the foreground. The caption, "Treat yourself. Nobody else will." I screenshotted it. Added it to the file. Not because it was evidence of anything specific, because I knew someday I would look back at this week and I wanted to remember exactly how she spent it. Elena did not ask me for updates. She brought me coffee in the morning, dinner in the evening, and in between she managed her own work, picked Maya up from school, kept the house running in the specific quiet way of someone who understands that the person they love is carrying something that has to be carried alone for a few more days. We had been married 11 years. She knew when to ask and when to let me work. On day 3, she said one thing over dinner. "You're sleeping." It was not a question. It was an observation. The way she said "you're sleeping" meant, "I've been watching and you're holding up." 11 years of learning each other's language. "I'm sleeping," I confirmed. Maya looked up from her plate. "Is something wrong?" "No, baby," Elena said. "We're just talking." Maya looked at me. 7 years old, and already she had her mother's instinct, the sense that the air in a room had a temperature worth reading. "You look like you're thinking very hard," she said. "I am," I said. "But it's almost done." She seemed to accept that. She went back to her dinner. I looked at Elena across the table. She looked back at me. Neither of us said anything. Day 4 was when the man appeared outside our house. I had been told to expect it. Our team had flagged the possibility on day 1 that Sasha might send someone to confirm the address, to remind me the threat was real. Knowing it was coming did not fully prepare me for the specific feeling of looking through the kitchen window at 7:15 inches the morning and seeing a man I did not recognize sitting in a gray sedan across the street, engine running. Maya was eating breakfast at the table behind me. Elena was upstairs. I texted our surveillance team. "Gray sedan, north side, plate visible." The response came back in 40 seconds. "Already on it. Do not engage." I turned around, poured myself more coffee, sat back down at the table across from Maya. "What do you want to do after school today?" I asked her. She thought about it seriously, the way she thought about everything. "Can we go to the park?" "Sure," I said. The park. I did not look at the window again. Not because I was not aware of it, because I was acutely, continuously aware of it. The way you are aware of a sound that has not stopped. But Maya was eating her cereal and telling me about something her friend had said yesterday. And I sat there and I listened to every word, and by the time Elena came downstairs the sedan was gone. Day 6 was a Thursday, 4:31 inches the afternoon. I was parked outside Maya's school early. The dismissal bell was still 20 minutes away, laptop open on the passenger seat, secondary phone in my hand. The authorization had come through at 2:17 p.m. I had been waiting for it since day 1. The document was 11 pages. I read it once. Quickly. Then I picked up the pen I kept in the center console, and I signed my name on page 11. Julian Mercer, Special Investigator. Outside the windshield, the school's front doors were still closed. A few other parents were pulling in around me. Someone's car radio was playing something I did not recognize. The afternoon light was the specific gold of early autumn, the kind that makes everything look slightly more significant than it is. I put the pen down. I looked at my signature on the page. Then I looked up just in time to see the school doors open and Maya come out first. She always came out first. She ran. She had been running out of school since the first day of kindergarten, like the building was something to escape. She had not seen my car yet. She was just running, backpack bouncing, looking for me in the line of parents. I raised my hand. She spotted me, grinned, changed direction. I folded the document, put it in my bag, closed the laptop. My phone buzzed. A message from the team. Subject confirmed at Blackwood office tomorrow morning. Arrival expected 8:45. Signing scheduled 10. I read it once, then I put the phone face down as Maya pulled open the passenger door, dropped her backpack on top of my laptop bag, and climbed in talking about something that had happened at lunch, a story that required significant hand gestures and at least 2 different voices. I drove us home. I listened to every word. That night, after Maya was in bed, Elena sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," I said. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. "I set mig alarm for 5:45. I did not sleep until well past midnight, but when I finally did, I slept 4 hours. Not well. Not badly. 4 hours of the specific sleep that comes when your body has made a decision, your mind is still processing shallow, dreamless. The kind that leaves you more rested than it has any right to. The alarm went off at 5:45. I was already awake at 5:43. Elena was asleep beside me. I dressed in the dark, the way I had dressed on dozens of mornings over the past 18 months, when I needed to leave before the house woke up. I knew where everything was without looking. Suit on the chair, shoes by the door, secondary phone already charged. I went downstairs, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window in the dark, and looked at the street outside empty. Ordinary. The gray sedan, long gone. Somewhere across the city, Sasha Voss was asleep in the apartment she had paid for with money that was not hers, probably dreaming about a triumphant morning. I drank my coffee. At 6:14, Elena appeared in the kitchen doorway. She had not needed the alarm. She was wearing the gray sweater she always wore on the mornings she could not sleep, and she looked at me the way she had looked at me across 11 years of mornings, like she was reading something she already knew by heart, but wanted to confirm. She did not say good morning. She said, "Come home tonight." "I will," I said. She crossed the kitchen and poured herself coffee, and stood beside me at the window, and we looked at the empty street together for a minute without speaking, and then I picked up my bag and I left. The team assembled at a federal building 12 blocks from Blackwood Co. at 7:30 a.m. 8 people. 4 agents from our division, 2 from financial crimes, 1 federal prosecutor named Diane Okafor who had been on this case almost as long as I had, and 1 person I had not expected to see standing by the window with a coffee cup when I walked in. Ryan Cho. I knew Ryan. Not well. He had been a compliance analyst at Blackwood for 3 years before Sasha had him transferred to a satellite office 18 months ago, right around the time I arrived. I had always assumed the timing was deliberate. I had filed it away as a data point without knowing what it meant yet. What it meant, it turned out, was that Ryan had been watching Sasha longer than I had gone to the SEC independently, 14 months ago, with his own documentation, had spent the last 3 months as a cooperating witness without anyone on my team telling me because the compartmentalization protocols required it. He looked at me when I walked in. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Then he said, "I wondered if it was you." "Likewise," I said. We shook hands. That was the whole conversation. There was not anything else that needed to be said. 2 people who had been carrying the same thing in separate rooms for the same amount of time, meeting on the other side of it. Some things do not require words. Diane ran the briefing in 11 minutes. Tight, precise, no redundancy. The warrant was active. The freeze on Sasha's accounts would execute automatically at 9:58 a.m. 2 minutes before the scheduled signing. Time to land while she was still in the building and before the counterparties arrived. We would enter at 10. I listened to everything. Asked 2 questions. Both procedural. At 8:40 we left the building. I had walked into Blackwood Co. every morning for 18 months. I knew the lobby, the way you know a place you have moved through without ever fully looking at the specific echo of the marble floor. The slight overcooling of the air conditioning. The security desk where a guard named Pete always nodded at me without quite making eye contact. I knew the elevator bank. The way the 3rd elevator ran slightly slower than the others. The view from the 34th floor on clear mornings when you could see the river if you stood at the right angle by the east windows. I had never walked in the way I walked in that morning. Pete looked up from the security desk. Looked at me. Looked at the 7 people behind me. Looked back at me. His hand moved toward the phone on his desk. "It's okay, Pete," I said. "We're expected." That was not technically true. But he sat back. He knew something had shifted in the air of the room, and he was smart enough to understand that his job in that moment was to stay out of the way of whatever it was. We took the elevators to 34. The floor was running at its normal Tuesday morning rhythm when we stepped out. The open plan section busy with the low-grade noise of keyboards and phone calls, and the particular energy of people who do not yet know their day is about to change. A few people looked up, looked away. Looked up again. I walked towards Sasha's office. She saw me through the glass. Before I reached the door, I watched her face go through three things in quick succession: recognition, confusion, and then something that was not quite amusement but was close to it. The expression of someone who has decided to interpret an unexpected situation in the way that flatters them most. She was sitting at her desk with her phone in her hand. She said something to the assistant at the desk outside her office. I could not hear it, but I saw the assistant glance at me and almost smile, and I understood what Sasha had said without needing the words. He came back. She thought I was here to apologize, to negotiate, to do what people do when someone with her kind of power applies the right kind of pressure. Fold, come back with their hat in their hands and a revised understanding of how things work. I pushed open the glass door. She looked up from her phone, opened her mouth to say something with the specific shape of a person about to enjoy themselves. Then she saw the people behind me. Her mouth stayed open. Nothing came out. I watched her look at the badges, look at Diane, look at Ryan, and that was the moment her face changed in a way that could not be taken back. The specific collapse of someone who has just understood not only what is happening but how long it has been coming, and from how many directions at once. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She looked down at it. I knew what it was, the notification from her banking app, the one that would be telling her that her primary account had been frozen, then her secondary, then the 3 accounts she kept under names that were not hers but that we had spent 11 months tracing back to her fingerprints. She looked at the phone for 4 seconds. Then she looked at me. There was a version of this moment I had imagined not many times. I had tried not to let myself rehearse it, but a few times, in parking garages and hotel rooms, and once at 2 a.m. at the kitchen table while Elena slept, where I felt something large and defined. Satisfaction. Triumph. The clean resolution of 18 months of sustained, deliberate patience, paying off in a single room. What I actually felt was simpler than that. He felt still. Diane stepped forward and began reading. The warrant, the charges, the rights, the specific formal language that turns a moment from a confrontation into a legal event. Sasha did not move. She sat behind her desk with her hands flat on the surface, and she listened, and she looked at me, and I looked back at her, and I did not look away. When Diane finished, Sasha stood up slowly. She did not fight it. She did not perform outrage or threaten lawyers, or say any of the things that people in her position sometimes say when they have not yet fully accepted that the version of the world in which they are untouchable has ended. She stood up, and she held out her wrists, and she looked at me with an expression I had not expected, not anger, not fear, but something closer to the specific humiliation of someone who has just understood that they were never as in control as they believed. The handcuffs closed. I took one step closer to her. Close enough that what I said next was between us and not for the room. I gave you a week, I said. You could have called a lawyer. You could have called the SEC yourself. You could have done a lot of things. I paused. Instead, you bought a car. She did not say anything. That's on you, I said. And then I stepped back. The room emptied in stages. Agents first, then the compliance team, then the building's own security, who had materialized somewhere around the time the handcuffs came out, professional and quiet, understanding their role without being told. Sasha was walked past the open-plan floor the long way. I do not know if that was deliberate or just the logical path to the elevator, but I watched 43 people stop what they were doing and watch her pass. And I watched her look straight ahead, and then I looked away because that part was not mine to observe anymore. Diane stopped at the door on her way out. We'll need you at 11 for the initial debrief. I'll be there, I said. She nodded. Left. Ryan was the last one out. He paused next to me. Good work, he said. You too, I said. He nodded once. He left. And then I was alone in Sasha's office. I stood there for a moment I had not planned for. In all the versions of this morning I had run through, and despite my best efforts, I had run through more versions than I wanted to admit. I had never quite accounted for this specific beat. The aftermath. The room after everyone has left it. The desk with the phone still face up showing frozen account notifications. The half-finished coffee going cold. The laptop open to a document that would never be signed. I looked at the laptop for a moment, then I reached over and closed it. I do not know why I did that. It was not procedure. It was not necessary. It was just the last open thing in the room, and something in me needed it closed before I could leave. I walked to the east window, the one where, on clear mornings, you could see the river if you stood at the right angle. It was a clear morning. I stood there, and I looked at the river for a while, and I let the room be quiet around me, and I tried to locate what I was feeling with the same precision I had applied to everything else over the past 18 months. Tried to name it, file it correctly. What I found was this: it was over. Not triumphant, not hollow, just over. The way a long project ends, not with a single decisive emotion but with the gradual recognition that the weight you have been carrying has been set down somewhere behind you and you have not quite registered yet how much lighter the air feels. I picked up my phone and called Elena. She picked up before the first ring finished. "Hey," I said. "Hey," she said. Her voice had the specific quality of someone who has been holding something carefully for a long time and is now allowing themselves to put it down. "It's done," I said. A long pause. Not silence. I could hear her breathing, hear the small sounds of the house behind her, the particular acoustic of our kitchen in the morning. "Are you okay?" she said. I thought about it the way she had taught me to actually think, not just answer. "Yes," I said. "I think I actually am." "Come home," she said. "I have a debrief at 11. I'll be home by 2. I'll be here." "Elena." "Yeah. Thank you," I said. "For the whole 18 months. Not just the last week." Another pause. "Longer this time." "That's what I'm here for," she said quietly. "Come home." I hung up. I looked at the river one more time. Then I turned and walked out of Sasha Voss's office for the last time, and I did not look back at it. I want to tell you about Marcus Webb. Not because he is the center of this story, he is not exactly, but because he is the reason this story exists. And I have been sitting with the question of whether to include this part for a while, because it belongs to him more than it belongs to me, and he will never hear it. I met Marcus 18 months before any of this. Or re-met him. I should say we had worked together briefly, years earlier, at a different firm. Ran into him outside a coffee shop on a Wednesday morning. He looked like someone who had recently had something taken from him and had not fully recalibrated yet. Thinner, quieter, the particular quality of a person who used to occupy a room a certain way and no longer trusted themselves to do it. We got coffee. He told me what had happened 2 years before that Wednesday. Marcus had been a senior analyst at Blackwood Co, good at his job, meticulous, ethical, the kind of person who flagged problems because that is what you were supposed to do. He had flagged a problem. The problem was Sasha Voss, and a discrepancy in a fund that did not add up no matter how he ran the numbers. He had gone to his department head. His department head had gone to Sasha, and then, in the space of 3 weeks, Marcus's performance reviews had been revised retroactively. 2 complaints had appeared in his file from people he had never had a conflict with, and he had been terminated for cause. He had lost his job. Then his apartment. His wife had held on for 8 months before she could not anymore. He did not blame her. He was living in a 1-bedroom in a neighborhood he would not have considered 2 years earlier, doing contract work, rebuilding from a foundation that someone else had deliberately destroyed. He told me all of this in the specific flat voice of someone who has told the story enough times that the emotion has been worn smooth by repetition. I listened to everything. I did not tell him what I was about to do. I could not. Operational security, yes, but also something more than that. I did not want him to wait for it, did not want him to organize his recovery around an outcome I could not guarantee. He needed to build his life back on his own terms, not on the anticipation of someone else's justice. We finished our coffee. He said it was good to see me. I said it was good to see him. We exchanged numbers and said we would get lunch sometime, the way people say that, and then we went in different directions. I walked 2 blocks, stopped on the corner, and called my supervisor. I said, "I need to be assigned to Blackwood. Marcus Webb does not know any of this happened. I have not called him. I do not plan to. What happened yesterday morning was not a gift I gave him, it was a thing that needed to happen regardless, and the fact that it helps him is a consequence, not a transaction. He does not owe me anything, he does not need to know my name was attached to it. Maybe someday he will read about it. Maybe he will see Sasha's name in a headline and feel something he has been waiting 2 years to feel. Maybe he already has a life that is good enough, that it will not matter to him the way it might have mattered a year ago. I hope that is the version. I genuinely hope that is the version, but I will never know. And that is okay. That has to be okay. I want to say something about the difference between revenge and accountability, because I think people collapse them into the same thing and they are not. Revenge is about making yourself feel something. It is personal. It is the need to be present for someone else's suffering because their suffering is the specific antidote to yours. What I did was accountability. I built a case. I followed procedure. I made sure that what Sasha Voss had done was documented, verified, and placed in front of people with the authority to act on it. I was not there for her suffering, I was there for the record. For Marcus, who would never know. For the investors who lost money, they will partially recover. For Ryan, who had carried his own version of this for longer than I had. I did not feel righteous about it. I felt like I had done my job. Maya was already home when I got there at 1:48 p.m. Half day at school I had forgotten, or maybe I had known and filed it somewhere, and the week had buried it. She was at the kitchen table with a drawing she was making, something with a lot of green in it, and when I came in she looked up and studied me the way she sometimes studied things carefully, like she was looking for information. "You're home early," she said. "I am," I said. "Is it done?" she said. "The thing you were thinking very hard about?" I looked at her. 7 years old. Her mother's instincts and her own particular way of seeing things that I had been watching develop since she was old enough to watch things. "Yeah, bug," I said. "It's done." She nodded seriously, accepting this, and went back to her drawing. I sat down at the table across from her. I did not open my laptop. I did not check my phone. I just sat there, while my daughter drew something green, and Elena moved around in the kitchen behind me, and the afternoon light came through the window at the same early autumn angle it had come through the window outside Maya's school the day before. I sat there and I let the week be over. It was enough. It was more than enough. There is a difference between revenge and accountability. One of them requires an audience. The other one just requires you to finish the work. If you have ever had to stay quiet while someone thought they were winning, drop a comment. I want to know who has been sitting with something like this. And if this story found you, you know what to do. Subscribe. What I have for you next week is a different kind of story, but it starts the same way this one did with someone who had no idea who they were dealing with.